I know you have many roles.
Yeah,
You wear a lot of hats.
that's where it gets a little tricky because it's like, what hat am I wearing now?
Yeah, that's true. I can become confusing, and to others, I always feel like.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Hmm.
Like, I'm really not that scattered. I do, I do a lot of things well.
I got an email yesterday inviting me to a show, and I was like, okay, so give me a little more context.
Right.
Like,
Yep.
what will are you asking for?
That's
And
fun.
let me go and get that hat.
Right.
Start thinking about it.
Yeah.
All right, Brenda, I think second day.
We ready, you're telling me?
No?
I need to fix the mic anyway.
Yeah. Because I did kind of shift a little, so.
Are you ready?
Ready?
You rolling?
Yep.
You're rolling?
All set, we're rolling,
Okay.
everything's rolling, rolling.
Anytime you're ready.
Alrighty. Thank you, Senator Dina Neal. We are back with Will Rucker with Compassionate Las Vegas to continue our conversation about mental health in our community. Thank you, Will, for being with us today.
Oh, it is my pleasure. I am so honored to be a part of this.
Thank you so much. Can you tell the community a little bit about you and your background and how Compassionate Las Vegas came to be?
Wow, that's a big story
That
and a
is.
big topic. Just a little bit about me. I've always been someone that has wanted to change the world. So way back in elementary school, I actually had to see the school psychologist because I was thinking about things like climate change and civil rights. And they're like, you shouldn't be thinking about that at his age. But I was. And so that has just caused me to begin this journey and this evolution of how I can actually create the world that I want to see, which is a world filled with love and joy and happiness and compassion. And so that leads me to the work that I do now with my nonprofit organization, as a pastor of a church, just as a community voice that's saying, hey, compassion is what we need. It's not just a luxury, it is an absolute essential for our world today. So that's what brought me to this point, and Compassionate Las Vegas was birthed out of what we like to call whispering conversations, bringing together individuals who had a passion for certain sectors within our community who are doing great work, and saying, how about we do this great work side by side together? We all want to see this compassionate outcome. Why don't we work together to energize our forces and amplify our efforts? So we conducted a survey of our Jameson Fellows, and the Jameson Fellows actually is a program of Compassionate Las Vegas that started about 10 years ago in partnership with the United Way. So it's a full circle program. But we did a survey of our over 200 fellows and identified 3 major areas of interest. And from those 3 areas, we began having, again, conversations and building teams to really impact those areas. Those 3 areas turned into 5, and now we're just like, you know what, we're taking over the world with compassion.
I love that, Will. Thank you so much. And I did have the privilege to be a 2020 Jameson Fellow.
That's right.
And I'm so grateful that you are here helping with the work and leading it in our community to have a more compassionate Las Vegas. If there's ever a time when we need it, it seems like it's now, coming through and out of a pandemic. And so we're grateful for all your work that you're doing here.
Thank you.
And I know you've talked about how when you are part of a community, and especially a compassionate community, that your mental health improves. Can you talk about that a little bit more?
Yeah, so there's a ton of research that's emerging. One of the hats that I wear, we were talking earlier about the many hats, but one of them is in substance misuse prevention. And what we're seeing the research show is the greatest asset for prevention is really a sense of belonging and community. And that's true for substance misuse as well as general mental health. And what we're seeing with social media is that we are more connected than we've ever been, but we're also more isolated. And there's always this idea of having to be good enough with the filters and all of the cool technology that's amazing, but it's also distorting our view of reality. And so while we are just a touch of a button away, we're also worlds away from each other. And so when we don't have the sense of community, we lose our sense of self, we lose our sense of safety and security, because we are, for lack of a better term, pack animals. And so we thrive in community. A lot of people talk about the survival of the fittest, but the research shows that it's really the survival of the most compassionate. So those that were able to work in teams were those that were able to survive and thrive and build communities. And so when we are detached from that, our mental health suffers. We become depressed because we are built for interaction. We're built for love. And when we don't have that sense of family, of community, of belonging, it really deteriorates us at our core.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I couldn't not help but think of the rat in the cage and the experiment where he keeps going back to the water bottle because he's in isolation for that drug. But when there's other rats in the community, he has no need for that. So it's a beautiful work that you're doing. Thank you so much. I know you talked about Jameson Fellows as one of the things that Compassionate Las Vegas does. Can you share with us some of the other things that are going on that are really exciting that I know there's many, but that you are looking forward to bringing to Las Vegas and expanding?
Absolutely. And I'm like, how much time do we have? Because there's a lot going on.
Right.
Compassionate Las Vegas is really a network of networks. And so our main focus is amplifying the efforts of those doing amazing things in the community. So we're not programmatic directly except for the fellowship. But what we're doing is, for example, earlier this year, we got together with the Obama Fellows and had an evening where we were able to just network and get to know each other and share our stories. And that was followed by a climate summit where we talked about the impact of our changing environment and what we can do to help literally save the planet. So that's the type of thing that we do, bringing together people for conversation. In addition to that, of course, we have our own podcast, and it's the Compassionate Las Vegas podcast that I'm privileged to host, where we amplify stories of hope and give people an opportunity to disconnect from the traditional news cycle and all of the challenging things in our world, and just have a moment to be inspired, get to know folks in our community that, like yourself, are creating real change, making progress happen day by day, and showing how far we've come. I think that without hope, we literally lose heart. And so the podcast is designed to provide more hope. Another aspect that we focus in on is values and creating a shared understanding of what compassion even means. And we do that through a program called Compassionate Integrity Training. And this is something that we can do in business settings, with community organizations, whatever the setting, we can do that. And Compassionate Integrity Training is out of Life University, where it's a 20-hour course that guides you through exploration of self and becoming skilled in the art of compassion, being able to center yourself, calming your mind and body, branching out into how to interact with other individuals, reflecting the fact that you're a person just like I am. We have the same needs, the same wants, same desires, same fears. And then we dive into systems and how everything is interrelated and interconnected. And so through Compassionate Integrity Training, we build a framework and a foundation just for communication, for common language, for having shared tools to really create a compassionate culture. So I think those are the big ones that we've got.
Thank you, Will. Appreciate that culture of compassion. And I've been able to sit in on a few of those integrity trainings, not the 20 hours quite yet, but it's all beautiful work. We also know that there's a collaborative healing program that you're involved in. I'm going to say that again, sorry. We also know that there's a collaborative healing that is happening in our community. Can you speak a little bit to that and its origination and where that's going?
Oh yeah, so that's a huge, huge asset for our community. Out of the 10-1 shooting was birthed the Las Vegas Healing Collaborative, and this is in partnership with the Center for Mind-Body Medicine. And Dr. Annie Weissman actually brought this to our community and recruited, I think the first training was about 100 of us in a room at UNLV. And the mind-body medicine is proven science, but it's not as wide known as some other methods. And with this mind-body medicine, we examine the connection between our brain and our body. We reconnect the mind with the body. And so one of my favorite parts of it is meditation. And meditation can be done in so many different ways. And through this collaborative, we teach people a number of ways to meditate. So whether it's journaling or drawing or shaking, and I won't do it because I've got a microphone on, but you stand up and shake, kind of like what you see in nature. After a traumatic event, animals just shake it off. Well, that proven science helps us to release that emotional energy and find ourselves centered. And through this collaborative, Again, everything is about building the networks and building the relationships. Through this, we've been able to train literally hundreds of Nevadans in facilitating this program. This is not quite 20 hours. It's a little more compact, but it's so powerful. And you bring together small groups where you're able to just release whatever you're holding, and the groups hold space and allow you the opportunity to reconnect with yourself and to address trauma. And that's really what the mind-body medicine addresses, is all of us have been through trauma. All of us are experiencing trauma currently. So how do we navigate that? How do we remain resilient through that? And so this program allows us the tools in partnership with the relationship building to really thrive as a culture and rebound from any traumatic event.
Thank you for sharing that, Will. I'm so grateful to see the progress that the Cloud of Healing has made as it's come to our community. I remember being in that room with the 100 people training with Dr. Gordon, and he walked up to me and really asked me a question I hadn't thought about for a long time, and he just said, "How are you doing?" And I had not thought about that. And the skills that are learned weekly through that 8-week course, the tools that it gives individuals to deal with trauma are incredible.
Yeah.
And so we really appreciate that, and we love that you're bringing a highlight to that it's here for our community in these times of need, for teachers, for children, for families, for some of our Capitol Police I know have used it, our firefighters, everyone, right? If you haven't experienced trauma yet, you will at some point, and likely we all have trauma going on now. And so even just a simple act like breathing and that tool to stop and remember to think whenever we're stressed or we just need to do self-care. And I love what you said about being compassionate also to yourself and before you can spread that to others. So it's incredible work that you're doing. And I also want to talk to you a little bit about what we see with children. We find that the studies show that children that are involved in compassion or kindness in their lives just have better mental health and well-being. Can you speak to that a little bit, how you've seen that in the community through children and adults?
Oh my goodness. And to quote a very famous song, I believe that children are our future. And so I'm so honored with the network with Compassionate Las Vegas. We're partnered with Green Our Planet, and they build community gardens. And the children are taught skills of business, but all of the STEM is included, and it's just a amazing way to get kids to be kind without knowing they're being taught to be kind. And what we've seen, that's just one example of many, but what we've seen is kids by nature are compassionate. They can have an argument and you're like, oh my gosh, you guys are gonna rip each other's hair out, and then 2 minutes later, they're best friends again. And so kids really lead by example in the fact that, yes, we gotta get our feelings out, and that doesn't mean we can't be friends afterwards. And so this work, this compassionate work is allowing them, kind of like with the adults, the skills to learn how to express. We're teaching kids meditation. We're dealing with kids in trauma. The mind-body medicine actually has a youth track as well. So all of these kind of converge and create, again, the future through our kids. So one thing I'll mention too is we have a campaign with Hope Means Nevada that we're partnered with, where we're in the schools and putting on programs just to say it's okay to not be okay, and to give kids the resources when they are experiencing mental health issues to reach out and have them addressed. So Hope Means Nevada is a great partner that does that work, and I encourage everyone listening to just check them out and amplify their message because it's so needed right now.
Thank you, Will. And I'm a fan of Whitney Houston too. I love that song because the children are our future, and they are the future of Nevada. And also in that song it mentions the greatest love of all is to love yourself, right? Yeah. And not be looking, like you said, for outside sources, to have that inner peace and love. And we're so grateful for everything that you're doing. You mentioned a little bit about children and forgiveness. Can you talk about, you mentioned that before with Compassionate Las Vegas and the role that forgiveness and acceptance play?
Forgiveness is such a big topic, and it's a triggering topic for many because whether it's your religious background or just the culture of your family, there are many views on forgiveness. And so one of the things that we're working through is restorative justice. And sometimes people believe restorative justice is soft on crime or it doesn't actually work, which the research shows is the exact opposite. you're dealing with root causes and you're creating a reconciliation. Those that have been wronged actually are restored as well as the offender. And so in this conversation around forgiveness, it is so critical that we release this. Any burden that we're holding on, there's a common meme that goes around. It's like drinking poison and expecting someone else to suffer because of it. When you're harboring resentment and unforgiveness, it is such a weight, a burden for you personally. And sometimes you have unforgiveness and people don't even know that you have an issue. So communication is where it starts, helping people to understand how to communicate clearly with being assertive, but with also, Brene Brown says it this way, clear is kind. And so communicating with clarity is actually showing kindness. So when we're talking about the issue of forgiveness, it's bigger than just, okay, you're not going to be punished for what you did. It really is an embrace and a restoration of an entire person, entire relationship structures. Because what we're seeing in our culture generally is harboring resentment. And it's amplified by fear. And the ultimate fear is what? Not belonging, not having that sense of security or safety. And so if we can forgive and get past whatever the offense was, we can then work towards healing. And then we can build our community stronger and more resilient and ultimately a better, brighter future for us all.
Thank you, Will. As you're talking, it reminds me of a visual. If you can visualize a palm tree in the middle of an island, and you've got people that are swimming out in the sea of compassion, right? And you've got other people that are dipping their toe in saying, I'm going to try this out, see if this works. And then you've got some tree huggers that they're not ready yet. So I would ask you, what would be your vision for how do you spread compassion and get the word out to those tree huggers, those toe dippers? You already have a great group that's moving forward with you. How do you continue to spread that kindness, and what motivates you to keep going?
I love that visual, and yeah, I'm picturing, because I've been called a tree hugger. Admittedly, I do love nature. But with that, the way that we get people in, I love the example again. You dip your toe in, you try it. You see the result of living in this way. And if you prefer it, you'll go deeper. And what I have found personally is that it's a lot easier to forgive people quickly than to harbor resentment. I found that it's a lot easier to work towards a society that supports all of us than to try to hoard things for myself, because the reality is desperate people anywhere is a danger to us everywhere. And so we have to address where people are. And this is an issue of diversity, equity, and inclusion, really, if you want to think about it. Because when people don't have the resources to have that sense of self, to have that sustainable life, then they do desperate things. And we can't blame them for that. It's a systemic failure on our part because we've not provided them the very foundations of life. Our core instinct is self-preservation. That's something that we can't override no matter how hard we try. So we have to provide the things that people need in order for them to thrive. And so to encourage them to join this work, it's by example. My motto has been, be the change. It's so funny that that's kind of becoming a popular thing. And I'm like, that's been mine for a long time, as if I made it up, right? But
Sure you did.
I'll take ownership. No, that was someone way wiser. Mahatma Gandhi is the originator there. But that's really what it is. It's about helping people to experience this world of compassion and decide for themselves what door they want to walk through. Is it the door of resentment and anger or fear? Or is it a door of joy and contentment and fellowship and community? And so what I have found is that that opportunity to engage in community calls us all in together. Admittedly, diversity is hard, and I'm not just talking about racial or gender or any of those things, just diversity of thought. When you have different perspectives, it's hard, but it's so much more beautiful, and we get so much more out of it because the best ideas come from a variety of perspectives. And so calling folks into this work, again, begins with letting them know the importance, explaining that compassion isn't soft or weak. Compassion really is strength. So creating that common language. And then giving them the skills and the tools to practice. I grew up playing musical instruments. Admittedly, I was never very good at the piano, never very good at the guitar, but I found my voice literally with singing and also with the saxophone. And both of those required practice. Doing your scales every day, doing a warm-up so that you are ready. And compassion is much the same way. There are skills that you build, and they build on each other in order to practice this, and you become more efficient and effective at being compassionate with intention and with practice. And my belief is that as people see how we treat each other, as they engage in conversations like what we're having and they listen, there's a little bit of a seed that's always going to be planted and then watered and then fertilized, and then it sprouts and grows. And one day they'll look up and say, wow, I would have handled this differently 10 years ago. I would have handled this differently 10 days ago. And I actually feel better because now I'm taking a pause. I try to start my meetings with just 3 minutes of silence, wherever we are, just sit and breathe, get in balance again. So little things like that can be in any environment, whether it's corporate or education or just in relationships. I guess what I'm trying to say is just practice. That's how you invite people in. You say, here's some tools, here's what it looks like in practice, and here's your turn to try it out.
Thank you so much, Will. And I would have to say that I believe the pandemic has exacerbated and shown us the difference that exists in equity and access for people to have these tools and these resources. And that's the culture that you're creating is one of care, caring for every individual as if they were you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I see that happening. So how can individuals in the community connect with Compassionate Las Vegas? What is the action call we can put out here today to invite them in to Compassionate Las Vegas and living the principles, or trying them, or dipping their toe, or swimming, or letting go of the tree for a minute to see if that helps them, improves mental health and well-being in all of our community? What would you suggest?
Our website is a great resource, compassionatelv.org. It's got a ton of resources, and we point you to other folks. Again, we're a network of networks, and so we always refer back to the Charter for Compassion, which is really what birthed this. This is where our mission stems from. The Global Charter has over 440 cities and communities that are a part of it, and that number is growing. Australia, the continent/country, is a compassionate country. They've agreed to the charter. Our city here in Las Vegas adopted the charter unanimously. So there are a lot of resources we point to that way, but compassionatelv.org is our website, and you can always email us, connect@compassionatelv.org, and we're happy to come have a conversation, to introduce you to the different tools and programs that are available, to invite you into our network. We have a fantastic steering committee that really, from a high level, guides how we interact with our community. And they give us the secret sauce to each sector within our community, because everything's a little different. But there are so many ways to get engaged. The Jameson Fellowship is by invitation. And so if you know a fellow, ask them to get you invited, and then you can apply and hopefully be accepted into the program. So there are a number of entry points, and of course the one that I want to promote is our podcast. Compassion.Vegas will take you to our podcast home, but you can find us on YouTube, you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and we have such a robust library of programs. Any subject we've talked to Dr. Weissman about the mind-body medicine. We've had Dr. Tyler on about children's advocacy and other things. So, I mean, just there's a long list of guests that are going to be inspiring and educational and informative. So that's how you get connected.
Thank you so much, Will. The work you do is inspiring, and I can't wait to see us become a compassionate country in the near future.
Absolutely. I think it's happening. We are moving towards compassion. Dr. King mentions that there's an arc towards our future, and that arc is towards love. And so I think we will definitely see not only our country, but our world be a place of compassion as a culture, just automatic.
Compassionate culture. Thank you so much, Will, for being here today. I don't know what else to ask.
No, it was perfect.
Okay.
And we're,
Okay, great.
yeah.
Will, is there anything I missed that you wanted to talk
Well, I
about?
was going to ask, were there any points you wanted me to highlight, or, because I feel like we covered a wide range, and you
We
did
really
really
did.
great. Like, you got us moving.
I thought she was good, yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh,
There's
no.
one thing
Yes,
I'd love
thank you,
to,
Chip.
and I'm not quite sure it works in with advocacy, but I'm curious about it, is how children respond to these concepts. Because I think they're a little grown up, right?
Yeah.
Like, not everybody gets
Right.
compassion compassion. So do you talk to kids, or does Compassion Las Vegas, is there a thing that goes towards school-age children about compassion? I'm just curious.
Oh, yeah, we definitely do. Like, kids are one of the focus. That's why the school gardens are so important. Should I be telling that to her?
No,
Oh, okay.
we did talk about that.
Yeah.
We did talk about it a little bit, yeah,
Mhm.
with that you do also the mind-body medicine for children, that there's
Yeah.
a whole unit and track for that.
But the language for kids actually isn't very different. They get it,
Yeah.
and I'm amazed at how much they get it. I had the privilege to talk with your kids, and I was blown away. I'm like, you all need to be hosting my podcast because you're better at this than me, you know?
But
But-
that's a good point. We have a director of kindness.
Mhm.
She chose that title. I would suggest you have a compassionate kids panel and let them come up with their titles, because that's what we did. So
Yeah.
Hannah wanted to be, everyone's the director of education, the director of animals. Hannah decided she's going to be the director of kindness.
Yeah.
So then I said, you know who you need to meet? Will Rucker. And thank you for mentoring her and allowing her to share her love for kindness. And she went and spread that in Northern Nevada to her community, to her school, and had projects going, and it was a beautiful thing. And as you said, the children are our future. They lead us by their example, as you are too. So you're doing great work with children
Thank you.
and all around the board. Appreciate everything you're doing.
Absolutely.
Let's see, what else?
That's good. It was very good. Love everything.
And we
with
can
that.
pop in that video of Hannah for 2 seconds.
Oh, that would
like
be
a tiny
great.
little clip in that. So it's
Yeah,
about
I-
one of our strong
I
start
think
kids.
that, yeah, I think you guys have heard, and then obviously we have the website, we have
Yeah.
the podcast, we can put that in,
Okay.
which is great.
Chip, is that enough on what you wanted with kids, or do we need more? Because
Do
we
you
are
feel
the
like it's
Children's
not,
Excellence.
I see what you're saying, is do you not feel like it's,
You know what we could bring up? We could bring up the restorative justice, because I love that you said,
Then let's talk about that a little
Okay.
bit, because we know that's
okay, it's a topic, yeah.
it's a topic. So.
okay.
Okay, I'm gonna
Okay.
say that for just a minute.
Okay.
Well, I love what you said about restorative justice, because when it's done well, the goal is to give every child or person the supports they need to be successful in life. And we have some examples in our schools. When they do that well, the children stay in school, get the extra supports they need, the children are protected, but they have a mentor, a person that helps them through what it is that they are needing in life, so that their needs are met and they can continue to be successful. I said that wrong, but I don't know if that was, Chip, was that enough or no?
No, I think so.
Okay. And then I was going to ask you one more thing. What was it?
Well, maybe what are the, I guess what I'd like to get to is how to get people to buy more into restorative justice.
Ooh,
Yeah.
I don't know if we want to tackle that. That'd be
I c-
another
I-
subject, you
It'd
think?
be a
Come
whole
back?
other subject, but
Yeah.
but I mean, I can give you a quick soundbite on it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
maybe just something.
Yeah.
Start with a question.
Okay. Well, you talked about restorative justice, and when it's done well, it's a beautiful thing. How can we get restorative justice more into our schools and into our community and done right?
Yeah, well, I think that every parent wants their kid to get a quality education. They want their kid to go to school in a place that they're safe, that they're encouraged, that they know they're going to thrive. And restorative justice brings that to life. When you look at punishing a child, what does that really accomplish? Well, it accomplishes what we've seen, which is overcrowded prisons, kids not attending school, dropping out, joining gangs, because gangs give you a sense of belonging. But what restorative justice does is it actually changes that person's outlook. It changes the way they interact, and it demonstrates the harm that they caused. So it doesn't sweep anything under the rug. It brings it to the light and the surface, explaining to that person why what they did was so harmful, the impact to the family, to their classmates, to whoever it might involve. And it really illustrates to them, like, this is causing harm. And guess what? We have this place where now we can bring you back and create an environment where you will not do that again. So you fill in the void that you created. So it's actually far more effective, because it doesn't just slap them on the hand and cause them to just not do that because, oh, I'm going to get harmed if I do this, but it changes their outlook. And so every person involved in this restorative justice work is creating a stronger, tighter community where these acts are dug up from the root. We're not just chopping off the leaves that we see, or the fruit, whatever you want to call it, but we're actually dealing with the root causes. And that then in turn makes us more safe and makes us a more fluid community.
Thank you, Will. So you're holding them accountable, and then the restorative piece comes in, restoring to them to their best version of themselves to be able to go forward in positive ways.
That's exactly it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I like that piece.
Yeah, that's great.
I know, like, there's a whole bunch of work
I'm
with
just going to
ponder.
say this. I need producers. Like,
Yeah, you do. Well, come on in. We'll share. We'll
I
share
love this.
resources. This
Yeah.
will be a shared grant project
Yeah.
writing or something.
Probably
I like it.
$1,000 an hour.
oh.
All right.
I thought it was great. We had a
Okay,
lot of good
thank you.
stuff.
Yeah.
I think that folds in well with what we started with.
Good. Good. Good.
Oh, that's right. Cause
So-
that'll be a
because
good tie
it's,
together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mhm.
Okay. Then
We let them on the hot seat.
Are we done? We already closed
Yeah,
up?
we,
When we transition to.
did you thanked him? You asked where we go from where, and then we'll go
Great.
to.
Excellent. Because we're done.
Awesome.
Dr. Tyler's gonna write the check, so I'm just gonna skip.
Okay.
And then we'll go back to the doctor and close it.
Excellent. Yes. Thank you so much. Will, you are amazing.
You are
And all of you are amazing.
I love it. I really do. Great messaging.
This is a joy, and I'm just so.
You're
happy
privileged to
see it.
have such a great, I mean, it's like such a great, to bring that sort of light, right? Compassion, to be able to
Absolutely.
every day, they
To
preach
work
that,
it.
but be able to actually talk about it is really key.
Is the work heavy though, Will? Feel the
Is it-
work
yeah,
is
it
heavy?
Sometimes it
Yeah,
is.
that's what I
So,
thought because you're
darn.
internalizing all
Darn,
the.
I was
Yeah.
kinda hoping you'd
No,
say
it
it
is,
wasn't.
but he's very compassionate, so sometimes he feels too much. Probably.
gotta
Maybe